Imagine being locked in a small windowless cell for 23 hours a day. No human contact, no conversation, just you, four cold walls, and the sound of your own thoughts closing in on you. That's solitary confinement, a punishment designed to break the mind. In the US, the use of solitary confinement is still shockingly common. Prisoners can be thrown into the hole for months or even years for fighting, disobeying orders, or sometimes for no reason at all beyond administrative purposes. This extreme isolation is supposed to maintain order, but it can have permanent, life-changing effects on those who experience it. By the time these inmates are released back into the world, they're not the same people who walked in. Many are left shattered, haunted by severe psychological damage they'll never recover from. Depression, hallucinations, paranoia, PTSD. These are just a few of the horrors prisoners endure behind those thick, soundproof walls. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on one of the darkest corners of the criminal justice system and what it really does to the human mind. Solitary confinement is the practice of isolating prisoners in small, often windowless cells for 22 to 24 hours a day with minimal human contact. The dimensions of these cells vary by facility, but are typically around 6 by 9 feet, about the size of a parking space. Inside, prisoners are usually provided with a metal bed frame, a thin mattress, a steel toilet, and a sink. Personal possessions are severely limited. Conditions can differ by country or state. In some cases, dim artificial lighting is kept on 24/7. In others, near complete darkness is maintained. The temperature is often poorly regulated, making cells unbearably cold or stiflingly hot. Meals are delivered through a slot in the door to avoid direct contact, typically consisting of basic, often nutritionally inadequate food. Prisoners in solitary are allowed 1 hour of recreation time per day, but even this is highly controlled. Recreation often takes place in a small, caged yard, where inmates may pace or attempt basic exercise alone. In some facilities, this hour may simply involve moving to another empty room with no direct sunlight or meaningful activity. The lack of meaningful stimuli, coupled with the harsh environment, makes solitary confinement an intensely dehumanizing experience. It's designed for control and punishment rather than rehabilitation, contributing to the severe mental and physical deterioration seen in many inmates subjected to long-term isolation. One of the most common psychological consequences of solitary confinement is severe depression. Prolonged periods without human contact, meaningful activity, or sensory input increase feelings of hopelessness and despair. Studies consistently show that inmates subjected to solitary confinement are far more likely to experience self-harm compared to those in the general prison population. Psychologists warn that this extreme form of isolation often causes the mind to spiral. Symptoms include persistent sadness, loss of motivation, and suicidal ideation. Alarmingly, solitary confinement settings report disproportionately high rates of suicide among inmates. A stark example of the effects of prolonged isolation is Albert Woodfox, who spent nearly 44 years in solitary confinement. Confined to a 6 by 9 foot concrete cell, Woodfox described waking each day wondering whether he could endure another without losing his mind. Like many others around him, he witnessed prisoners break down, reduced to endless screaming. Woodfox developed survival techniques to preserve his mental health, such as composing lists of simple life goals, dining with family, driving a car, or taking a holiday. Despite multiple overturned convictions, Woodfox was only released in 2016 after a plea deal on lesser charges. His case demonstrates the lasting psychological toll such isolation can impose. Solitary confinement can induce severe psychological disturbances, most notably paranoia and psychosis. Paranoia involves an irrational and persistent belief that one is being threatened or monitored without evidence. Psychosis is a broader condition where individuals lose touch with reality, experiencing delusions or hallucinations that can severely impair their ability to function. Extended isolation deprives prisoners of crucial sensory input and social interaction, both essential for maintaining cognitive and emotional stability. This sensory and social deprivation causes the brain to seek stimulation, which can lead to distorted perceptions of reality. A tragic example is Kalief Browder, who spent 3 years on Rikers Island without trial, 2 of those in solitary confinement. During his time in isolation, Browder attempted to take his own life multiple times. Upon release, he exhibited severe signs of paranoia, frequently expressing fears that he was being watched and followed. His condition worsened. He once threw away a television because he believed it was spying on him. Despite psychiatric treatment, Browder continued to struggle with delusions and hypervigilance. In June 2015, he took his own life. His case underscores the profound and lasting damage solitary confinement can cause, reinforcing concerns about its continued use in the penal system. If prisoners are able to make it through solitary, the effects after release can be permanent. One of the most unrelenting and painful symptoms of extended solitary confinement is PTSD. Post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, is a psychiatric condition triggered by exposure to traumatic events. Symptoms can include flashbacks, nightmares, emotional numbness, and heightened states of anxiety or fear, even when there's no immediate danger. This psychological state can be deeply ingrained even after release. Former prisoners often report hypervigilance, distrust, emotional outbursts, and difficulty reintegrating into society. Some develop strong aversions to closed spaces or environments that remind them of their confinement. Studies have found that the longer a person spends in isolation, the greater the likelihood of PTSD symptoms appearing or intensifying. Sleep disorders are a common and debilitating consequence of solitary confinement. These conditions include chronic insomnia, fragmented sleep, and disrupted circadian rhythms, the body's natural 24-hour internal clock that regulates sleep-wake cycles. In a standard environment, exposure to natural light and regular daily interactions help maintain a healthy sleep schedule. Solitary confinement disrupts these essential cues. Prisoners often live under artificial lighting that never fully dims or in near total darkness for extended periods. The lack of external sensory input confuses the brain, making it difficult to establish when to fall asleep or stay asleep. Sleep deprivation, in turn, exacerbates existing mental health issues, impairing cognitive function and emotional regulation. At California's Pelican Bay State Prison, prisoners in the Security Housing Unit, SHU, frequently reported suffering from insomnia and severely disrupted sleep patterns. Many described nights of restlessness and an inability to distinguish night from day. The long-term impact of sleep disorders can be devastating, impairing not only mental health, but also physical well-being, highlighting yet another consequence of prolonged isolation. Cognitive impairments are another devastating effect of solitary confinement. These impairments can manifest as memory loss, difficulty concentrating, and an overall decline in cognitive function. In solitary confinement, the stark absence of these stimuli creates a sensory and mental vacuum. Some recounted feeling mentally dulled after years in isolation, a condition that persisted even after their release. From depression and paranoia to cognitive decline and PTSD, the effects are severe and often irreversible. No one walks out of that tiny cell the same person they were when they walked in. We hope you enjoyed today's video. If so, please don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. Thanks for watching and take care.